Thank you very much for welcoming me here and allowing me to come and speak with you. Not sure if you know too much about where I'm from, but I'm born in Katherine, youngest of 7. We were all born in Katherine, and that was in the days where a 5-hour trip to Darwin was going pretty fast. You wound through the hills around Adelaide, Pine Creek and all that sort of thing. Our families had a long association in Northern Australia. My father was the head of CSIRO and did a lot of work to bring in improved pasture and stuff up here. We've also had a long association with the Indigenous people. My grandparents started Maningrida, and also another community called One Arm Point north of Broome. So we've had a long association in this area. Now, as you're aware, I'm no longer a police officer. So I was in my 24th year with the Northern Territory Police. I got to a point where I could no longer be silent. And if you've never heard of a bloke called Dietrich Bonhoeffer, I suggest you go and research him. He was an amazing man of courage. He ended up being hung in the final stages of the Second World War for his stance against tyranny and what was going on in Germany. And one of his most famous quotes was, "Silence in the face of evil is itself evil." And another one, which I really liked as well, was "Not to speak is to speak." So I could no longer reconcile what I was being asked to do and what I saw occurring within the Northern Territory Police. The Cho directives, I believe, are an abusive process. It's very clear in the directives, and I'll just read it. It says that a Cho directive relating to the immunisation of staff starts with the wording, "Consider it necessary, appropriate or desirable to take the action to alleviate the public health emergency." And if you have a look at section 48 of that Public and Environmental Health Act, it identifies that the declaration of a public health emergency is subject to there being an immediate serious public health risk, right? Which is so urgent, these are the words of the Act, that is so urgent to require the declaration, and that a state of disaster has not been declared, and it's not appropriate to declare a state of disaster under the Emergency Management Act. So it beggars belief, to coin a phrase from a QC in Alice Springs, it beggars belief that there is such an urgent requirement to have these emergency declarations going on and on and on. I questioned very early on, if this thing is so infectious, so contagious, why have we not seen field hospitals complementing our military field hospitals being established to complement our overrun hospitals in Alice Springs, Katherine, Tennant Creek, Darwin? Because I tell you what, if there was something like Ebola, I'm sure we'd have military field hospitals set up. So for me, you just look at it. I've been trying to get people to start thinking, using this part of your brain, which is your thinking part of your brain, and just ask the simple question, why? So that's all you have to start with. And you can do that with the person in line at the shopping centre, or when you go and buy fuel and you hear them talking, just say why. If they're talking about this, because they probably are, seems like the only thing we talk about these days, you can just put that in and just say why. Why is this relevant? Why do they need to do this? And I think once we start getting people thinking, critically thinking, then we'll start to see the majority coming on board. And that's the problem. We've got about 30% which are totally bought into it, and you're never going to change their belief status. You got 30%, which are all of you mob, awake and aware, and you've got about 40% who we're fighting to wake up. Whichever side gets the majority there, they've won this. All right? So we've got to try and wake up the 40% and get them to start critically thinking, because part of the whole process, we didn't just get here overnight. Right? This has been something which has been going on for years, decades, but it really increased in the last 5 years or so, and we saw it with the cancel culture, people being cancelled for speaking against the so-called public narrative in a whole range of fields. Then it rolled into the BLM protests, and then it rolled into this. So the public, the general public, were conditioned to not question, because if you questioned, you were castigated and you were labelled as a bigot or a racist or whatever, even though you were asking very legitimate questions. And what we've seen is a slow descent. Actually, no, it's a very quick descent in the last 18 months. We've gone from rule of law to rule by law. Now, if you're not aware of what they mean, search it. Don't use Google. It'll probably be cancelled out. So go to something like DuckDuckGo or whatever and see the difference between rule of law and rule by law. So rule of law essentially is where everyone is equal before the law, and there's no differentiation. Rule by law essentially is the rule is applied differently to different groups, and it is used as a tool of oppression, and that is what I believe we're seeing now. And it's basically a tool used in a totalitarian society. So we're here now not by accident, I don't believe, and it's a really dangerous place, and we need more people to start standing up and speaking out for true justice and freedom in this country, because it's not the Australia I grew up in the 1970s. So, just very briefly, someone asked me in Alice Springs, what is it that you actually want? It was a very good question, because we sort of, some people say, what do you want? We want to go back to what it was before COVID. Oh, heck no. Because that's what's got us into this mess in the first place. Yeah. Because we were too complacent. The Australians sitting back, and just the ambivalence of people is just staggering, that they would be quite happy to hand over their freedom. Freedom should never ever be returned to you. It should never be taken off you. It's not something that you get back for being a good boy. Yeah. So basically I sat down and I thought, well, what do I want? Well, I want, what I think we all want is initially the revocation of the emergency declaration. Because once that emergency declaration's gone, all the Cho directives are gone, all right? They're finished. They're not law, they are rules being put in place. You'll probably correct me, but they're put in place for the purpose of the emergency declaration, and that's why originally emergency declarations could only be for 5 days. All right? And that's why you saw every 5 days it being advertised, it's been extended, and then late last year they changed the legislation to make them 90-day orders. Very convenient. And because the reason why they were 5-day orders was because the creators of the legislature realised that they were such. The chief health officer could impose such draconian rules in situations of dire emergency, but they were only for 5 days. The Romans had it, and they had a person very similar. He was given 6 months where he could do whatever he liked, but it was for a very definite time period and not to be extended. So that's what I'd like to see. I'd like to see the Public Health and Emergency and Environmental Act be returned to the 5-day orders rather than 90-day orders. the power of the CHO to be severely curtailed, rather than one person, or perhaps Mr. Gunner and Mr. Chalker making the rules and the CHO stamping them. But and for no employer to be forced or to be able to discriminate on grounds of medical or vaccination status for an employee or a member of the public. Right? You should not ever be asked to disclose your private medical data to enter a shop. Never, ever, never.
Absolutely.
So, I don't know where you stand on faith, but regardless of where you stand, it's your spirituality that no man can take from you. No one can take it from you, regardless of what law is imposed. And it's your freedom that no government should ever take from you as well. So, in times like this, it's your inner strength, it's the faith that you have in that you've developed over time that will hold you through all these hard times. For me, it's the Bible, and I read that. There's Psalm 91 is a great one. If you've never read the Bible, go and have a read of that. Look, that's pretty much it for me. You've got to look around the country, and when professional people are speaking out at the risk of losing their job, resigning, being stood down because they're taking a stance, well then you need to take note. You need to listen, because people don't just give up their career for nothing.
Yeah.
And I've given up 24 years. I was a bit burned out from what occurred at UNTB and the lack of leadership provided by Mr. Chalker. But just seeing what has been occurring within the police has just been heartbreaking. And I've had, since being locked out or kicked out of the Alice Springs police station, and the reason given was that they were concerned who I would speak with inside and what I might do on the computer. Well, I can talk to all of those same people at the front door. And since then I've had police officers from all over the Northern Territory ring me and say, we've read your email, thank you NT Independent, wherever you are. They did a very good job of that article in bringing the truth out and reproducing my email to the Commissioner in full. But I've had many police officers from every station ring and say, we've read your email and there's not one word in your email that we disagree with. However, they are all stuck in a situation of having to put food on the table. And no one should ever lose your basic human right to put food on the table and to work. That is a basic human right that Australia has signed up to. All right? And for some reason they've just thrown it out the window. What we thought was sacred 18 months ago has just been thrown out the window. So, it's and I still stand by my small page defence. So that's an in-house job. So I think basically I'm here to give you a message of hope. There is hope. I believe we will come through this, but we need more people to stand up. We need more people doing what you're doing. Look at every one of you. You all have a circle or a network of people that you connect with who are somewhere on the spectrum of the mandate. Right? And we need you to, each of you, to be speaking to all of your network people and just posing the question. Just put it in there. If you see the shutters roll down, don't bother. All right, they're already that's at 30%. But if they're willing to engage you, that's that 40% that we need to bring on board. All right? So engage with them. We will get through this, but to steal Ricardo Bosse's statement, we've got to do it with truth, honour and without violence. All right?